Okay, so I've always liked Centurion, and now that the final support cards are out, the Atri and the Primera Primus, I decided I'd go ahead and make a little short guide explaining how to play the deck because I think it's really fun. I think it's a cute little deck. I have a soft spot for this deck. It's not the best deck in the world, but I definitely think it's quite an enjoyable deck. It's very relaxing to play. So I'll just jump right into it. This video might be relatively long, not by my standards, but just generic video standards. So be prepared for that. What I'm going to do is give a brief introduction of the deck, explain it to you like you've never seen it before. Then I'm going to go a little bit more in depth into the individual choices, and then I also have a spreadsheet to show you later, which is going to go through the basic combos and some ideas about comboing in general. So we'll just start with the basics. This is the list. This is the list that I would play in the current format, but it's very close to a generically good list as well. You can play this in any format, and it's functionally the same thing. The Bestials here are not just a format choice. This is not just because they're good against Blue Eyes or anything like that. This is actually a core part of the deck. I think you have to play Bestials as Centurion. I think any other build is suspicious. Outside of something that I've not seen yet and I'm not aware of or how good it could be, I think Bestials are the best way to play this deck. They have a lot of synergies with the deck that we'll get into later and you'll see in the spreadsheet. But let's start with the basics. So what is Centurion? It's a mid-range one-card combo deck with starters like Primera and Trudea, and the end board that you end on basically revolves around this card, which is an Omni Negate, a really powerful Omni Negate, and you usually have 1 to 2 of this. You have a searchable trap card, which is a targeted banish, which is a disruption, and on top of that you basically have hard drawn hand traps when you go first, because you can see that we're playing a lot of them. If you count the Bestials as hand traps, there is a good amount here, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That's a lot of hand traps. It's not a huge amount, but it's a decent amount. And yeah, you'll see later on when we talk about the specific nature of this deck, why we choose specifically these hand traps. But one thing you'll notice about them is that they are all usable when you draw them on the opponent's turn. So if you draw them with Regained, or you draw them with Legacia, which is an in-engine way to draw a card, or Atri, which is another in-engine way to draw a card, if you do that on the opponent's turn, or you draw them with Maxi, which is of course a way to draw cards on the opponent's turn, then they're going to be live. And that is actually a crucial part of the deck, in my opinion. So yeah, basically when you're looking at the end board for Centurion, it's usually an Omni Negate, sometimes a Banish, you have, and then hard drawn hand traps, basically. You have Ash, Ogre, Vela, Maxi, the Bestials. Druid's Worm can often translate to another disruption because you can synchro it off to get the send effect. Baldrake is of course its own extra disruption. You have a lot of in-engine lights and darks like the Primera and Trudea and the Auxilla and Legacia. It's all lights and darks. So you don't just have to have another Bestial to make Baldrake a disruption. And you also have, like I said, the Phalanx as well. You generally have 2 Synchro 12s, so as you'll see in the combos, these days, you never used to do this very often, but these days the one-card combos actually end on Blazer. So you have Blazer, which is an Omni Negate. Then you have the setup for another Blazer on the opponent's turn, which is why we play 2. You don't always get to that, because obviously hand traps exist, but often you will, especially if you go uninterrupted. So you generally have a couple of disruptions, but you don't always go for this second Blazer. You can also go for Legacia, which is its own disruption. And yes, sometimes you'll go for a turn 1 that doesn't go for Blazer turn 1 and instead searches for a trap card. It's very mid-range, basically. What I'm getting at is that the end board is 2 to 3 disruptions in engine, and then some number of hard-drawn hand traps, which assists you in sealing out the game, basically. Your best end boards will have like 3, 4 in-engine disruptions because you'll be able to get to Seals or Masquerena or SP on your end board, all of which are disruptions, as well as the double synchro disruption setup and the trap card, and some number of hard drawn hand traps on top of that. So it is really good when you full combo, it is very solid, but it is not unbeatable. So yeah, just to summarize what I said, it's a 1-card combo deck, and the end board that you make with all of these 1-card combos is generally manageable, and it's made solid by the fact that you probably have a hand trap or two to back it up. You could win reliably often when you full combo. It's not weak by any stretch of the imagination, but it can be broken even by engine if your opponent has a good hand. So that is something to keep in mind. When you go second with Centurion, it is basically it's just hand trap, right? The entire plan for going second is hand traps. Your engine has very little way to go second. You have a lot of normal summons, which just get stopped by something on your opponent's end board, and then that's it. You don't have a lot of extension. You have basically 6 extenders in engine. You have these 3 field spells, and then the 3 Emblem of Oaths, which are extenders. These are both starters, but they're also both extenders. But beyond that, you just have your normal summon, which is the Primera or the Trudea. That's just 1 to 2 pushes that you could draw from the Centurion engine, which is of course not enough to break a board. Going second is extremely hard. You basically rely on hand traps. If you don't stop your opponent from comboing, you probably just lose. That is the nature of Centurion. So yeah, that's basically an introduction to the deck. You can see that it's not bigger than 40. This is definitely a 40 card deck because you're trying to draw your starters, which you have a limited number of, and you're also trying to draw your hand traps, which some are better than others, of course, right? Maxi is of course the best one, and you're also trying to draw specifically your best Bestials like Magnamut and Lubellion when you go first. Ghost Ogre and Ash are decent as well, so yeah, that's the plan. I have here the starters isolated, so we can talk about the starters individually. There are 5 different starter cards for Centurion. You have Centurion Primera, Centurion Trudea, Stand-Up Centurion, which is a field spell, and then Emblem of Oath, the quick play spell. And then there's also Bonfire, which is a starter because it can search for Trudea. She is a pyro monster. So what Primera does is on normal or special summon, you can add a Centurion from the deck to the hand, any Centurion card. And most of the time in the combos and in practice, this is going to be your field spell. Everything revolves around the field spell in this deck, so I guess we might as well cover it first. The field spell has this effect. If it was activated that turn, you can send a card from your hand to the graveyard and then place a Centurion monster from your deck in your trap zone, in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. So this is the mechanic that Centurion revolves around. It's similar to Snake Eye. They all put themselves into the back row, and then they all special summon themselves from the back row. You can see this Primera has this effect here during the main phase. If it's a continuous trap, you can special summon it. They all have this effect. During the main phase, you can special summon it. Sometimes they have this extra effect, you can alter its level, but every other Centurion, which we'll go over later as well, has this effect. And that's important because given that they are continuous traps, it's important to note that this is a quick effect, which means you can do it on the opponent's turn, which gives a bit of context to this next effect of the field spell, which is if a monster is special summoned, you can immediately synchro summon. So basically what you're doing is you're putting monsters into the back row, then on your opponent's turn you're going to summon them from the back row, trigger the field spell, and then synchro summon. Primera here is a tuner. Trudea here is not a tuner. You can see you can alter the level, so you have a bit of level manipulation for different synchros. And the field spell can obviously place one from the deck into the spell and trap zone to set it up. Emblem of Oath, this card basically just searches a Centurion, but instead of adding it to your hand, it places it into the spell and trap zone from your deck. It does unfortunately have this awkward lock where you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except Centurion monsters while you control a card with that name. So basically the card that you put onto the spell and trap zone, the card that you search with this, even if you summon it as a monster, you cannot synchro anything other than Centurions, basically. But once you've gotten rid of that card, and once you've synchroed into a Centurion, you are then out of this lock. You are then free to summon non-Centurion monsters. And then Emblem Oath also has this second effect where you can set a Centurion spell trap directly from your deck. This is surprisingly underused. You would think that this is an effect that you would use quite a lot, but it's actually not. You almost always use it to place with this effect, to place a Centurion card. You never really use this secondary effect. But if you do, you can also set the field spell, so it's a second copy of the field spell. There's no lock associated with this second effect, so it is worth noting that is just another way to get to the field spell. And something you can also do with Oath is set the trap card. So if we go back to the main deck, you can see that we play the trap card. This card can set the trap. So if you ever have multiple copies of Emblem Oath, note that this card is once per turn. You can flip it in your opponent's turn to set the trap, and then it's live for your turn. So those are just some neat possibilities that you can do with this effect. Mainly you're going to use it to set the field spell if you get disrupted, because sometimes it is more appropriate to extend that way than this way, with the place effect. But most of the time you're going to use this for the place effect. Okay, so going back to the starters, you can see that there's 14 starters total. If you max out on all of these starters, you have 14. And in a 40 card deck, it's good. It's good if you have all 14 in a 40 card deck. You have a 90% chance to draw a starter going first in your opening hand. A 90% chance to draw a starter or more. If you trim this down, as a lot of people do, Bonfire is sometimes cut from Centurion. Some people just play the 4 in-engine cards and they don't bother with Bonfire. If you play no Bonfire, you have an 85% chance to draw a starter in your opening hand going first, which I think is comparatively low. I think that 90% is a good benchmark to meet. Personally, I think that hitting that 1 in 10 is solid enough for me. So I've always been of the opinion that you should play Bonfire, because the number of starters, basically 12 starters, is just not enough. It's not high enough. The consistency is not high enough. The only thing I might do is cut 1, but I would still play 1 Bonfire just for consistency. It's 87% chance if you do it this way with 13 starters. But I like this. I like playing all of them. Unfortunately, I think that you have to. The big downside is that Bonfire is only searching for Trudea, and Trudea, when you normal summon this card, well, this is a normal summon. This is also a normal summon, which means Bonfire is also a normal summon. So you have 8 cards here, 8 of your starters all require the normal summon, which means they don't really extend each other if you already normal summon. That is a big problem, and that is a big reason why you would want to cut Bonfire, more so than the fact that you're drawing too many starters. It's more so about the normal summons, which is the strongest argument to cut Bonfire, but I think the consistency is important. I think you should play it. Either 2 or 1, but definitely don't play none of it. I think you need at least 13 starters, but 14 is my favorite. Trudea, we haven't really gone over this. Primera on normal summon searches for a Centurion card, which gets you to the field spell. Trudea, when she's normal summoned, well, she doesn't have an on-summon effect, but she has an ignition effect to place it back into the back row, and then place another Centurion from your deck, which is going to be Primera most of the time. Or it's going to be one of the other ones which we'll talk about. And then, of course, you have this effect to special summon. So this is a starter because it can get you to Primera if you haven't got her yet, which in turn makes Bonfire a starter because all of this gets to the field spell. So those are the starters. If we talk about the bricks, these are the Centurion bricks. You can see there's actually 6 of them. One of them is arguably not a brick, but here are the in-engine bricks. We have Atri. This is another Centurion card. It has this effect. that during the main phase special summon, just like the rest of them. And then it also has this other effect. This is the reason you're playing this card. If it's normal or special summoned and you have an emblem card and a Centurion card in your graveyard, you can draw a card. So what this card basically does, this is one of the new ones that adds on to Centurion and makes it stronger. This basically means that your combo gets 2 free draws. Your first turn combo gets 1 extra draw, and your combo on the opponent's turn, or the amount of stuff that you do on the opponent's turn, is the same, but you get an extra draw. So you draw 2 cards over the course of your normal combo by including Atri in your deck. And that's huge. This ties into what I said before about playing a lot of hand traps, and specifically hand traps that you can draw on the opponent's turn and use. This is where this card comes up, right? You're going to draw 2 cards and you're going to draw into a hand trap most of the time, which means you're getting an extra disruption. Gargoyle, this card is a level 8, so you can't normal summon this one. It also has the effect to special summon while it's in the back row. And in the hand, you can send a Centurion card from your face-up field to the graveyard to special summon this card. This is an effect that you will use surprisingly often, but not amazingly often. And it's not great when you do it, but it is decent. Sometimes it is the critical difference. You actually need this for a lot of combos. You need to play Gargoyle anyway, just for this effect, because the Centurion cards are roll hard once per turn, and you desperately need another name besides just the starters and the Atri. You desperately need another name, which is the Gargoyle. So you need to play this one. So it's also for the level modulation, it's very key to have a level 8 monster that can also be a level 4. Trudea is the same, but again, you need another name. You need 2 that can do this. Then you have Wake Up Centurion. This is basically a brick because while it looks like it's an extender, the fact that it special summons, you need to have a monster in your face-up back row, which means you need to be playing already, which means this is not a starter or even an extender, because the nature of the Centurion starters is that if they get stopped, you don't have something in your back row. If they get impermed or ashed, you haven't got a card in the back row yet, which means this doesn't extend. So this is a break. This is not a good draw. But basically what this does is summon a token, level 4 or 8. And that helps you with completing synchros. During the main phase, you can banish it and then send a Centurion card from your deck to the graveyard. That is important because of this card, which is the trap card. This card, like I said, is a target a monster on the field and banish it. It also then special summons it during the standby phase of the next turn to its owner's field. You can target your own monsters, you can target your opponents, and it's going to summon it to its owner's field during the next standby phase. This is a pretty decent disruption, but it is worth noting that the special summon matters. The fact that this card returns does mean that this is not just Mirror Jade, this isn't just banish a monster, this does have a downside. It also has this graveyard effect where you can banish it and then special summon a Centurion synchro from your graveyard, which is where this effect from Wake Up Centurion comes in. This is the card that you're going to send with this effect. You're going to send the Phalanx so that you can use this graveyard effect. The reason why I have 2 trap cards here for a total of 6 bricks. We've also got Branded Regained. I haven't forgot about this. I'll talk about this in a sec. The reason why we have 2 Phalanx is because I think you need 2. I think you should play 2 in your deck. 1 to send with Centurion, Wake Up Centurion, and then 1 to actually search and set to your field. Simple as that. Branded Regained. This is obviously because you play Bestials and you play Lobelian. This card is really good in Centurion, not just because you're playing Bestials already, but because it adds in, it synergizes with the game plan of drawing on the opponent's turn, right? Those extra draws that you can get on the opponent's turn, maybe on your turn as well, from Regained, play into all of the hand traps that you're playing again, so that your end board is actually a winning board. Remember, I said that the end board is strong but mid. It's manageable. A good hand can beat it. If you back it up with a bunch of hand traps, if you're lucky enough to draw 2 or 3 over the course of your draws, then you can push it over the top to be unbreakable. And that is the point. Regain really helps with that. So let's go back to the main deck. now that I've given a brief introduction to Centurion, that probably took too long. Sorry, the cards, you're probably familiar with the cards, but we do have to talk about the extra deck. There is a core to the extra deck, so before we get into the more interesting stuff, I do just need to go over the basics of the extra deck. I have this here, the Cent extra deck core, just to highlight them. These 8 cards are the core of the extra deck, in my opinion. So you play the Centurion cards, which is Auxilla. This is a Synchro 12, it's completely generic. This is going to be made with a level 4 tuner, usually Primera, and then a level 8. So Gargoyle at level 8 or Trudea when it's adjusted to be level 8. If this is special summoned, you add a Centurion card. Simple. Most of the time this is adding either Wake Up to extend your combos, or Phalanx to add a disruption to your end board. And then during the end phase, this is actually the most important effect on this card. During the end phase, you can place a Centurion monster that's banished or in your graveyard in your spell and trap zone as a trap. So this is how you set up your monsters after synchroing them on turn 1 into the back row again, so that you can summon them again on the opponent's turn, trigger the field spell, and then synchro again. So if you didn't know, that's basically the game plan of Centurion. You're synchroing once on your turn, sometimes twice. You're synchroing on your turn, placing them in the back row again, placing the starters in the back row, summoning them again on the opponent's turn to get another synchro on the opponent's turn. This is the other synchro, this is another Synchro 12. When this card is special summoned, you can draw a card, and then you can destroy the monster your opponent controls with the highest attack. So this is really good because this is a disruption. If you synchro this on the opponent's turn, you get to draw 1 and then destroy. This can be better than a negate. As crazy as it sounds, as powerful as Cosmic Blazar Dragon is, Omni Negate, sometimes Legacia is just better, because destroying a card is a disruption, just like an Omni Negate is a disruption. And if you then draw a card that's a hand trap, that's just 2 disruptions. 2 disruptions is better than 1, almost every time. Even if the 1 disruption is an Omni Negate, 2 disruptions is often just better than 1. So don't be afraid to go for Legacia as your disruption Synchro 12 instead of a Blazar, a second Blazar, usually. So you play 2 Legacia. I think that you should play 2 just because very often you will make this turn 1. What comes up quite often in Centurion is that there is no good card to search with Auxilla. If you draw one of your trap cards and you already have your engine going, which you must because you're synchro summoning, what do you add with Auxilla? There's not really any point to add follow-up because you already get follow-up. You get follow-up on the opponent's turn, you get more follow-up in your opponent's end phase. You have infinite follow-up with Centurion. You don't need to search for it with Auxilla. But there's also no more disruptions that you can search for. If you have the trap hard drawn, often you can get Wake Up, but let's say you already searched for Wake Up with your Primera, or you hard drew the Wake Up as well. Well, in those situations, you're not going to bother searching a Centurion card because they're very redundant. They don't do anything. You're just going to go for Legacia instead, which is going to draw a random card, which is obviously a lot better because it could be a hand trap, right? Adding an extra disruption to your end board. Even if your opponent doesn't control anything, you can still draw the card with this effect, and it doesn't matter that you don't get to destroy. This card also has a similar effect to Auxilla. During the end phase, place a Centurion monster from your hand or graveyard into your spell and trap zone. Notice that it does from the hand or the graveyard, whereas Auxilla does from the banished or the graveyard. It doesn't usually matter because the cards are just in the graveyard most of the time, but if they are banished by your own Bestials or by Shifter or something, keep in mind that Auxilla can replace them, but Legacia can't. This also can be a way of getting cards out of your hand as well. The bricks that we'll get onto. Well, we've talked about the bricks already, but I haven't talked about what happens when you draw the bricks yet. So yeah, Legacia is a really important card. Then the core of the deck is basically this. It's Blazar and Crimson Dragon. Crimson Dragon is a generic 12, which is just as easy to make as the Legacia and the Auxilla. If you already have one of these, Legacia or Auxillas on the field, you're going to summon Crimson Dragon as your next Synchro 12, most likely. so that you can immediately tag it out into Blazer, which is just a beast. This card is insane. This card just wins the game like so often by itself. If you're ever playing against a grindier deck, a deck that isn't trying to push and kill you, then this card just destroys them. If your opponent's playing Labyrinth and you have a successfully summoned a Blazer, it's so over because it's just a negate every turn. It's so safe because it banishes itself. I guess I should go over this card in case you aren't familiar. Quick effect, you can banish it until the end phase as cost to activate an effect, which is Omni-Negate, Negate Summon, or even Negate Attack and end the battle phase, which is something I've done before against Tempai, which was surprisingly effective. The fact that it banishes for cost and even returns as cost, so even if your opponent negates this effect, it will still return in the end phase, just makes this card super safe. Right, when it returns in the end phase, it's not a hard once per turn to use the effect, so if they threaten to remove it again as a quick effect, when you return it, you can just negate again, banish it, and it will still return again in that same end phase. So it is really, really safe once you get this card going. The danger, like I said, when we talked about Legacia being potentially better, the danger with this card is that because it banishes itself, you obviously remove the body from the board, which makes it slightly easier for your opponent to OTK, and if they do push an OTK, the fact that this card comes back in the end phase doesn't mean anything. So the fact that it is just one disruption like that can sometimes be the weakness of this card, but if your opponent isn't playing a deck that's going to OTK you, this just wins, and if you ever get two of them, it's an insta win, for sure, just an insta win. Baron, I consider this to be core because when you play so many Bestials, you have a lot of level 6s, and you have, of course, your main tuner, which is Primera, she's level 4, that adds up to 10, so the best generic 10, if that's what your Synchro adds up to, is of course Baron, so you're going to make Baron most of the time. There is Chaos Angel, which was in the deck, if you remember, but this is obviously the main one. You're going to make this most of the time. And then there's Primera Primus. This is the other new card. This is a Synchro 8, so you can get this with a level 4 tuner like Primera, but then a adjusted level Gargoyle from 8 to 4, or you have Trudea without adjusting. This is how you make the Synchro 8. And on summon, what this card does is add an Emblema card from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Then you can destroy 2 cards, one on each field. The fact that you can destroy cards, don't let that distract you. This is not a card that you really want to summon on your opponent's turn. This is also not something that you care about doing turn 1. You mainly just summon it to search for an Emblema card. This allows you to search for Emblema Oath, which we'll go back to the main deck here, since we've covered these cards now. It allows you to search for Emblema Oath, which allows you to get to Atri, which allows you to get the condition for Atri to draw cards live. You're always going to have a Centurion card in the graveyard, and by getting to Emblema Oath, because you searched it with Primus, that's how you make Atri draw cards. And that is the main purpose of this card. It also has this other effect in the graveyard. If a face-up Centurion leaves the field by a card effect, you can special summon it. It's a nice little bit of recursion, but you don't rely on this at all. This doesn't really come up super often. And yeah, you can see this is what the full complete extra deck looks like. The core fits very nicely. You have a lot of bonus options after that. So yeah, that basically covers the basics of the deck. Let me go ahead and go beyond the basics now and just talk about the exact deck list as a whole. So why is the deck built like this? I've explained basically about the hand traps and trying to maximize on starters and also hand traps, especially hand traps that you can draw on the opponent's turn with your Atri and Regained and Maxi and Legacia, and then they're still immediately live. That's the reason why we don't play cards like Imperm. Imperm doesn't meet that criteria, right? If you draw Imperm and you already have a board, it doesn't do anything. It's not a hand trap. Same for cards like Cold Buy and Cross Out. If you draw these with Legacia or Regained or Maxi or Atri on the opponent's turn, they're complete deads. You want almost every card that you draw to be a hand trap. And a Bestial fits really, really nicely into that camp. Bestials are so good at this because not only are they disruptions against a lot of decks, but they're also bodies that help you synchro into things like Baron on the opponent's turn, and they're also bodies that help you survive and trigger regained, set up a grind game just to get to the next turn and survive. So they're really, really good. They're the perfect draws with the Centurion combo, which draws a lot of cards. These are the perfect cards to draw into. Beyond that, of course, there's Ash, Maxi, Ghost Ogre, and Vela. These are the next best things to draw. You could also play things like Ghost Spell. This is a hand trap that meets these requirements, but Ghost Spell is relatively underpowered right now. I wouldn't say this is the best card right now, so we don't play Ghost Spell. Another example of a card that you wouldn't play is Gamma. You wouldn't play Gamma in this deck because it doesn't meet those criteria. Talents is another non-engine card that doesn't meet that criteria of being a hand trap. Droplets is another card like that as well. You don't play any of these. Your entire plan is to play only hand traps that you want to draw on the opponent's turn. So, given those pieces of information, the main deck basically is fully explained. If you look at it, it's basically just that. It's just the hand traps, it's just the starters, it's one of each brick. Atri, you need to play this to have the draw cards. You need to play Gargoyle because the combo doesn't work without it. You need to play Regain because you're playing the Bestial package. You're playing as many Bestials as possible. The only Bestial you're not playing is the third Baldrake and the third Lubellion. The third Lubellion makes sense because this is not a card that you can draw on the opponent's turn to act as a hand trap. So you want to cut down on those where possible. The Lubellion is only good going first, and in grind games. The third Baldrake is simply because it doesn't fit in the deck. Vela is pretty generic, and it's a little bit suspicious to cut Vela down to 1, and I think it's better to cut the Baldrake, simply because it is a hard once per turn. All of the Bestials are hard once per turn, whereas Vela is not. And this is something that comes up a lot because you're drawing so many cards. The fact that you can draw 2 Velas and then drop them both is actually pretty clutch. So that is actually a good reason to play 3, but because in the very specific format right now against Blue Eyes, Vela is not that great. Blue Eyes is the best deck, so I've decided to cut the Velas down to 2. Instead, Ghost Ogre is a more premier hand trap right now, and we're playing a couple of them because of that. So yeah, we're playing the Bestials because they synergize with Synchros and with the game plan. And then we're playing all the starters, and then we're playing all of the bricks. And there's nothing else to this deck list. The main deck has absolutely nothing else going on. And that's good. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, you don't need to overcomplicate it. It's extremely one-track minded. You're trying to go first, you're trying to draw your starter, you're trying to do your combo, back it up with as many hand traps as possible. Simple as. The extra deck is also relatively self-explanatory. So if you remember the core cards, which is the Centurion monsters and the Crimson Dragon, the Blazar, you need 2 Blazar specifically because you often, as you'll see in the combos when we get to the spreadsheet, you summon one turn 1 and then you get the opportunity to make another Synchro 12 on the opponent's turn, which is almost certainly going to be another Blazar. Sometimes it's Legacia, but it's often just another Blazar. So you're going to want 2 Omni Negates, of course, where possible. You play the 1 Primera Primus, you don't need another one of this. I've never thought that I needed a second one, so I'm only playing 1. And then Baron because it's the best Synchro 10. But beyond that, you have a lot of room. You have the next best Synchro 10, which is Chaos Angel. This works very well. You actually have lights and darks all over the place, right? Primera is a light, Atri is a dark, the Bestials are dark, Trudea is dark. So basically your non-tuner is almost always dark, and then your tuner, which is almost always Primera, is going to be light. So it's very easy to make a Chaos Angel with both effects, which is very nice. But also, even if you don't, Chaos Angel is really nice just to be summoned on the opponent's turn using the field spell, and then you get a banish, right? It's pretty nice. Something that's very nice about Chaos Angel as well is that you don't always need a tuner. So let's say you have Gargoyle in the back row and Trudea. Both of these are non-tuners, but it is possible that alongside a Bestial, you can make a Synchro 10, right? A Bestial plus either Gargoyle adjusted to level 4 or Trudea not adjusted and left at level 4. That's going to be able to let you Synchro with the field spell still because you can make Chaos Angel. So this is also important for that. You then have Snake Eye's Doomed Dragon. This card, it isn't just Snake Eye that can play this. Any monster cards in the back row, whether they're traps, spells, or equips, whatever, can be sent away to summon Doomed Dragon. So, as you might expect, sometimes you're going to have spare cards in the back row which you can just send away to summon Doomed Dragon. And this is also, I mean, this is its own card, right? Like 3000, summon for free, target a monster your opponent controls and push it into the back row. That's a decent effect in its own right, but it is also level 8, which means it does work with synchroing, so you can actually do lines going second where you break a board using this. Although I will say this comes up way less often than it sounds. You would think that you might summon this all the time, but it turns out in practice, no you don't. You just summon it every now and again when there's no other alternative. Next, you play Typhon, simply because the extra deck is not super tight, so you should play Typhon. That is just a rule of thumb. You play Moon Maiden here because you can link off Primera because she is a spellcaster for Moon. And this is important because it means that if you just normal summon Primera, you get impermed or something, and you have no way to extend, but you do have a Bestial. What you can do is link off the Primera, put Moon Maiden on the field so that there is a light monster in the graveyard, which is going to allow you to summon your Bestial. And that might matter if we're talking about Magnemont specifically, or Lubellion specifically, because that's going to allow you to get to Regained, or if it's Magnemont, it's going to allow you to maybe summon an SP, and then get another search in the end phase. It's just better than not having the Moon available. It helps you do this, set up 2 monsters, basically lets you get to SP. Seals. You play Seals because you're playing a lot of Bestials, and a couple of the Centurions, Gargoyle and Atri, are even dragons. Even the Auxilla is a dragon as well. But mainly it's to turn 2 Bestials into something, aka Seals. This is, in my opinion, a little stronger than going IP into SP. Even though IP into SP is obviously insane, you do have to link off something, and the Centurion monsters like being on the board. You don't actually have a lot of junk on the board in your combos, so Seals lets you be very clean, bounce something, and you even get to access more of your Bestial engine in the process. It's also worth noting that this card can summon Atri from your deck, or even more importantly, from your hand. Right, this card can summon a dragon monster from your hand or deck. So if you actually have Atri in your hand, and you have no way to get it out of your hand, sometimes Seals can actually let you do that. Although, I'll be honest, that doesn't come up super often. And then you play IP because you sometimes have a couple extra bodies when you hard draw a lot of Bestials. So turning them into IP obviously just makes your end board really strong, it just raises the ceiling. Same for SP, this is obviously the card to summon with IP, but it can also be the summon instead of IP if you just want to summon SP instead. It's a good way to preserve room in the extra deck, basically. You can just summon SP on your end board instead of IP, and then play something else instead of the IP. But this is the extra deck. I think it's relatively standard. The things that you might see, I have a little section here called cards not to play, which we'll go over in a second. But usually you can see like slight variation in the extra deck, but if you played this, it's completely fine. This is 100% a fine extra deck for Centurion. You don't need anything else. So yeah, that's basically it for the deck. I think the best way to give you some more context and understanding of the deck is to go over some of the combos. So let's jump over to the spreadsheet now. Okay, so this is the spreadsheet that I made. You can see it's It's got an example deck list here, which looks a little similar to what we showed, but a little different in a few different ways. But for the most part, it's the same. And we have the replays and combos down here. You can see it's not super long. If you've seen my branded spreadsheet or my Snake Eye spreadsheet, this is very short in comparison. But like I say at the bottom here, Centurion is a very simple deck, especially compared to those other decks that I mentioned. So the combos are actually not super complicated. I'll show these combos up here, the first 5. These are the basic 1-card combos. Primera plus a discard, Trudea plus a discard, Stand Up, which is the field spell, plus a discard, Emblem of Oath plus a discard, and then Bonfire plus a discard. The reason why all of these 1-card combos require a discard is because the field spell requires you to activate this effect in order to do anything. All of the combos require this card to use its effect, where you have to send a card from your hand to the graveyard. So that's why every 1-card combo is technically like a 1.5 card combo, where you discard a card. So let's start with this first one. We can see that Primera plus a discard ends on Blazer plus draw 2. And that's a pretty common theme, right, to end on this double Blazer. So this is how we do it. So I've got the Volcanic Rat here. This just represents any discard. This is my favorite card to use for this. So the way it's going to work is you're going to start by normal summoning Primera, activate the effect, and you're going to get the field spell. The field spell is going to activate its effect. You're going to discard the rat, and you're going to place Trudea. You're then going to use Trudea to special summon itself, and then Trudea's second effect on the summon, or rather on the field, this ignition effect to place itself back into the back row, and then place Gargoyle from the deck. Now this position here that you get to, this is basically the setup that you want in every 1-card combo. You'll see that we're going to get to this position, or a very similar position, every time, where we've basically used the field spell to get access to our names like this. Then we're going to summon the Gargoyle, and in this combo what we're going to do is I put a counter on it to represent changing its level. We're going to change it from level 8 to level 4, right? Reduce its level by 4. So this is now a level 4 Gargoyle. You then are going to make the Synchro 8, that's why we needed to change the level. We're going to activate the Primus as Chainlink 1, and at here we're also going to add Gargoyle. This card has this very important effect. If it's sent to the graveyard as Synchro material, you can add it to the hand. The replay misses this for some reason, but you're going to get Gargoyle back in the hand. So you do have an extra card, a little bit of follow-up as well. From here, you're going to search the Emblem of Oath with the Primera Primus. Now you're going to activate the Oath, and you're going to place the Atri from the deck. Now you can use Atri's effect to special summon itself, and now because you have Oath in the graveyard and the Primera, you wouldn't have the Gargoyle, but you still do have the Primera. You're going to be able to use Atri to draw a card. In this case, drew a Druid's Worm, but ignore this card, could be anything. Next, we're going to synchro with Primera Primus, which is a tuner, and Atri, which is also a tuner, but if you'll note, Atri has this effect. If this card would be used as synchro material, you can treat it as a non-tuner, which is a very neat little convenient way of letting this card always work for your synchros. So you're now going to synchro into a Synchro 12. You're going to summon Auxilla. Auxilla will search for Wake Up. Now we're going to use Wake Up because we have the Trudea in the back row. And then we're going to summon a token, and the token is level 4. The reason why the token has to be level 4 is because we're going to summon back the Primera Primus. So we're going to activate the Centurion, the Wake Up Centurion's graveyard effect. We can use both effects in the same turn. And we're going to send Phalanx. Phalanx is then going to be able to use its graveyard effect to summon back the Primera Primus. And then you're going to synchro into your Synchro 12, which is Crimson Dragon. Remember the Emblem of Oath lock, how it locks you into only summoning Centurions from the extra deck? Remember that that only applies while the monster that you summon, or a monster with that original name, is on the field. So we placed Atri. Now that Atri is gone, we can summon non-Centurions. And now because we have the Crimson Dragon, we're just going to be able to target the auxiliary, put it back, and summon out a Blazer. This is Blazer, the image isn't showing here for some reason. And then we're going to go to the end phase, where we have Auxilia's effect to place Atri. Placing Atri here is pretty important instead of Primera, because you're going to want to draw a card on the opponent's turn. It's much better than searching for a Centurion card. Like I said, we're trying to draw those hand traps. So then on the opponent's turn, this is what we're demonstrating now. The opponent will have their first action in the main phase. Of course, they always get that. We can't do this first, but as soon as they start playing, we're going to be able to summon the Atri and the Trudea, and then we're going to get to trigger the field spell and the Atri. In this exact situation where you're ordering the chain links like this, there is certain cards to play around. If you go chain link 1 field spell and chain link 2 Atri, then you're playing into Ghost Ogre, because Ghost Ogre will destroy your Atri and then your Synchro Summon will fizzle. And if you do it the other way around, Atri, Chainlink 1, and Stand-Up Centurion, Chainlink 2, you're playing into Dominus Impulse. Depending on what you're playing against, you might want to play around different cards. The reason why this doesn't play into Ghost Ogre is because this card can't be destroyed while you control a Centurion monster card. So because you control plenty of Centurions, this card can't be hit with Ogre if it's Chainlink 2, but it can still be negated by Impulse. Depending on what you're playing against, you might want to consider the chain links, and you also might want to consider the chain links based on specifically what else you have on the board. Let's say you had a random Primera on the board as well. Well, in that case, you're no longer losing to Ghost Ogre and Atri, so Chainlink 1 stand up, Chainlink 2 Atri. If they chain the Ghost Ogre, you still get to synchro with the Primera and the Trudea, right? So things like that can change the way that you would sequence it. Something like Labyrinth, for example, would never be playing Ghost Ogre, but they would be playing Impulse. A deck that plays light monsters, like a Fiendsmith deck, is clearly not going to be playing Impulse. So you can think about things like that when deciding. But basically what's going to happen is you're going to draw a card with Atri, you're going to synchro off into another generic 12, which is Crimson Dragon, and then you're going to use Crimson Dragon to summon out the second Blazer. It is worth noting that if they had Impulse, they can always just hold for Crimson Dragon anyway. But they don't always do that, especially if your opponent has a monster on the board, because you might go for Legacia instead of the Crimson Dragon, so they might feel very silly if they hold the Impulse. But yeah, generally this is what you're going to do. And now you have 2 Omni Negates plus 2 draws to disrupt your opponent. It's not amazing. It's not an FTK board, right? It's not a Snake Iron board. It's not a U-Bell board. But it is 2 disruptions, 2 guaranteed strong disruptions, and then 2 potential disruptions. Plus you have 3 more cards in your hand that could be hand traps. Realistically 4, because even though you discarded 1 for the field spell, you're not going to discard a good hand trap, right? If you draw Maxi or Ash, you're not just going to discard that. You're going to discard a card that isn't one of your hand traps. So you have 4, 5, 6 other cards that could potentially be hand traps to add on to this end board. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's it. That's it for Primera. Now let's look at the Trudea combo. We can see it's exactly the same end board, Blazer plus draw 2. So I'm going to go through this one quicker. I won't take it step by step. We're going to start with Trudea, and we also need our discard. We're going to start by normal summoning the Trudea, use its effect, place it in the back row, and then that brings out Primera. We haven't got to Primera or our field spell yet, so we can't go for Gargoyle, we have to get Primera. Then we're going to use Primera, summon it, on summon, she's going to search for the field spell, activate the field spell, and then place Gargoyle. This is that same position. From here, the combo proceeds in exactly the same way. This position is indistinguishable from whether you started with Trudea or Primera. It's indistinguishable, so the combo, as you would expect in theory, goes the exact same. So I'll play it again here just to help you memorize it. I'm going to search for a Volcanic Rat here that represents our draw 1 with Atri. and that represents our second draw. So exactly the same end board. We have 2 Omni Negates plus 2 random draws. Next up, Stand-Up Centurion. This is another starter, and you can see that the end board is exactly the same again, so you might expect how this is going to go. If we start with the field spell, we're going to activate the field spell, discard, place Primera, activate Primera, search for Trudea, Trudea normal summon, place in the back row, and place Gargoyle. This is the same position again. This is indistinguishable from whether you started with Primera or Trudea. So it's exactly the same line once again. And for thoroughness' sake, I will show it. This time I remembered to add back the Gargoyle. So this is actually the truest version of the combo where you actually have the Gargoyle in the hand as well. Okay, so there we go. We have that end board. Okay, so now we're moving on to a slightly different combo. We can see that the Oath 1-card combo, it said that Oath is a starter, and it is, but it ends up doing a slightly different combo. So as you might expect, because these other combos we actually searched Oath using Primera Primus, if you draw the Oath, it's obviously going to be redundant to search for another copy. So it makes sense that starting with Oath, which is a hard once per turn, would actually be different. It makes sense that this would be a different line. And in my opinion, the strongest combo to go for with just Oath plus a discard is actually just Blazar plus draw 3. So we're swapping out one of the Blazars for a random draw, which remember is not as bad as it sounds because we're full of hand traps. So this combo is going to look slightly different. We're going to start by using Emblem Oath to place Primera from our deck. Then we're going to use Primera, special summon herself, add Trudea, normal summon Trudea, place it in the back row, and we're going to place Gargoyle. So this is the same position that we've saw before, but we don't have the field spell yet. So this is a very different line by comparison. Next, we're going to use the Gargoyle, and we're not going to change its level. We're going to leave it level 8 because we're going straight for a Synchro 12, which is Auxilia. We need Auxilia to search for our field spell, and we're going to chain Gargoyle, of course. You always want to use Gargoyle as chaining 2 just in case your opponent was holding Ash. They're probably not. Most people know to just Ash Primera, but in case they didn't, you might as well chain block. And we're going to get the field spell. So then you're going to use the field spell, discard your random card. You can discard the Gargoyle, but I recommend not doing that. So we're going to place Atri with the field spell because that's the one name we haven't gotten to yet. Now we're going to summon the Atri. We have Emblema in the graveyard plus Primera, so we can draw a card. Next, we're going to use the Gargoyle. So this is why you can't discard the Gargoyle. Realistically, you can. If you really didn't want to discard any other cards, you could improvise. If the card that you would have to discard would be like a hand trap or something, you could improvise a better combo by discarding the Gargoyle, but in this pure version of the combo, we need the Gargoyle because we're going to use it. We're going to send away the Trudea from the field to summon out the Gargoyle, and this is how we get our second Synchro 12. So we're going to summon Legacia here. Why are we summoning Legacia? What's the reason to summon Legacia? Well, the reason why we're summoning Legacia is because we don't have a body in the back row. So what's going to happen is during the end phase, let's suppose that this was a Crimson Dragon and we summoned a Blazar instead. Suppose that we went for Blazar. In the end phase, we would have Auxilia effect to place one of these cards in the back row, but it would just be one, and that's not good enough because that doesn't translate to a Synchro on the opponent's turn. There's no other body, right? We need 2 at least to make a Synchro happen on the opponent's turn. Because we sent away our Trudea just now to summon Gargoyle, we're missing a body in the back row compared to the other boards, right? So the other combos. So instead, what we're going to go for is Legacia, to draw a card, because Legacia also sets up a card of its own in the end phase. So we're going to go to the end phase, Legacia is going to place the Atri, and Auxilia is going to place the Gargoyle. It's important that you place one of the non-tuners and then one of the tuners, right? You need either the Trudea or the Gargoyle, something that can be level 8, and then the Atri. You definitely want the Atri over the Primera for reasons I've said before. You want to draw the card, not search. And then you need either the Gargoyle or the Trudea. The Gargoyle is better just because it keeps it in rotation, right? When you synchro again on the opponent's turn, it's going to come back to your hand. So the resource loop keeps happening. And then on the opponent's turn, you're going to be able to summon the Atri and the Gargoyle. You're going to use the chain links in whatever order is appropriate. You're going to draw your third card, and then you're going to synchro into Crimson Dragon, add back the Gargoyle, and get the Blazer. So this is the end board for the Oath 1-card combo, and this is the strongest thing that I think you can do with Oath. And then next there's Bonfire. I'm not going to show this because it's literally the same as Trudea, which is the same as Primera in stand-up anyway. You're just going to search for Trudea with the Bonfire. I have some notes here, so you can read these if you want to look at this spreadsheet. I did forget to mention actually that the spreadsheet is completely free to access. I'll just link it in the pinned comment and in the description. You can also find spreadsheets similar to this on my Discord. This here, the coolest Discord ever. You can definitely come here and see plenty of other spreadsheets by me and other people as well that are just free and offer some free resources to help learn decks. Next, there is some 2-card combos, but first off, there's this. There's the OG combo. I call it the OG combo because this is what you used to do with the 1-card combo before Atri was released. So before we got Atri, this is how you would play a Centurion 1-card combo. And it's worth pointing out because this is something that you're still going to do if you want to play around Nibiru, right? So you can see that we get to the same position just like normal. Then when we use the Gargoyle, we're not going to make it level 4, we're going to leave it level 8 because we're going for Synchro 12. Remember, Primera Primus isn't out yet, Atri isn't out yet. We're just going to get the Synchro 12, we're going to search for the Phalanx as a disruption, we're going to set it, and then in the end phase, Auxilia places our Primera. Then on the opponent's turn, we have the 2 monsters to summon out and add up to a Synchro 12. We get a free search with Primera instead of a draw, and that gives us the Synchro, right? The Crimson Dragon into the Blazer. So it's still 2 disruptions, it's Blazer plus Phalanx, but it's less likely to be more than that because we're not drawing cards, we're instead just relying on whatever we hard drew in terms of hand traps. Phalanx is also a slightly worse disruption than a second Blazer, so this combo is definitely weaker, but as it says in the notes here, you can still do this now if you want to play around Nibiru. I'll move it up, I don't know if you can still see it under my head, but it does say that this is how you can play around Nibiru, and you can do this with any of the 1-card starters, exactly the same. Then there's some 2-card combos here. This is just, I'm only going to show you a few of these, but basically the important one that I want to show you is what happens when you basically draw 2 pieces of your Centurion. So we'll start with Primera plus stand-up. So if you draw Primera, and this also goes for Trudea as well, if you draw 2 pieces of your Centurion starters, so your normal summon and then also the field spell, what you're going to get to do is use Primera to search for Phalanx, and this is just a free Phalanx because ordinarily you would have searched for the field spell and then done the regular 1-card combo, but this time you already have it, so you get to search Phalanx. It's basically that simple. The reason why you want to search for this right away is because it plays better into Max C, for example, or Ghost Ogre on the field spell, or Ghost Ogre doesn't work actually, but let's say they hand trap you and stop you. It's nice to have this back row already searched and set up as a disruption, right? So you're going to want to search it early, Then you're going to discard, and you're going to do the regular 1-card combo. This is where playing 2 phalanx comes in really nice. You can still do your regular line here, and still benefit from having the phalanx as a disruption. So we've got the regular 1-card combo going off here. Atri draws a card. And then we still get to go Auxilia, search for Wake Up, and then banish to send the second phalanx because we're playing 2. This is why you want to play 2. And then we have the exact same end board. In the opponent's turn, we're going to summon out our second Synchro 12, draw our second card. And then we also have Phalanx as a bonus disruption. That is basically the extent to what happens when you draw an extra starter. In the case of Primera plus Oath, we see that we have Blazer plus Phalanx plus draw 3. Remember that Oath is a different starter. When you hard draw it, it allows you to draw a card instead of adding an extra Blazer. And if you compare it to Oath 1-card combo, Blazer plus draw 3, Primera plus Oath gives you Blazer plus draw 3 exactly the same, but with a bonus Phalanx. So it's going to be the exact same thing as to what I just showed. It's going to be an early Primera searching for the Phalanx, which is beneficial for the reasons that I just said. Actually, we're not. We're going to search for the field spell. I completely made that up. This line has to go like this. We're going to go Auxilia, search for the trap card. And now we're going to use the Oath for the Atri so that we can get the draw 1. And now because we're locked by Oath right here, the Atri was still on the board, we have to summon Legatia. We cannot afford to go for the Blazer here. So this is going to get us a draw. But this is what we want anyway, because like we said before with the empty back row, when you have an empty back row, 1 Auxilia doesn't cut it. You don't want 1 Centurion in the end phase, you want to place 2, basically. You want to be passing turn with 2 Centurions in your back row. If you have 1, you can make it work if it's a tuner. If it's Atri or Primera, you can make it work with a Bestial, allowing you to summon a Baron. But if you don't have that, and in these pure combos, theoretical combos, we don't have these Bestials, then you want to make sure that you set up 2 Centurions in the end phase, not just 1. So it's better to go for Legatia here anyway. And then again, you of course have exactly the same thing. Drawing another card with Atri, and getting back Gargoyle and summoning Blazer. Exactly the same. The next combo I want to show you is Primera plus Lubellion. I think it's important to show you how drawing Lubellion actually does represent a whole bunch extra stuff. So you can see the end board here. You might be surprised to see that Lubellion adds this. Blazer plus SP plus Druist plus Baron plus draw 4. So how the hell did we make this? Well, you can probably figure it out if you think about it, but let's go over this combo. This is why Lubellion and Bestials in general really complement the Centurion deck. Or it's one of the reasons. I've already talked about quite a few reasons to convince you of that. So we're going to start with Primera. In general, you always want to start with your normal summon. I should have mentioned it when we talked about this last combo, Primera plus Stand Up, or Primera plus Oath. You always want to start with your normal summon, Trodea or Primera, Bonfire, because these cards bait the hand traps, and then the hard-drawn Oath or the hard-drawn field spell invalidate those hand traps, right? It's kind of like normal summon Snake Eye Ash, get impermed, special summon Diet Bellstar. It's negating your opponent's hand traps, basically. Whereas if you did it the other way around, your opponent would potentially be forced to hold their hand trap for a more specific choke point, and that might actually end up hitting you harder. So it's always better to go for your normal summon first, and that's exactly what we're doing in this combo as well. We're going to go Field Spell, discard the Rat, place Trudea. Then we're going to go for the exact same line, we've seen this before, going for Primera Primus, search for Oath. And then we're going to place Atri. Atri is going to draw us our first card. So that's our first draw. Then we're going to synchro off for Auxilla. You know where this is going. We're searching for Wake Up. Activate Wake Up because we have the Trudea on the board. Summon the token. Activate the graveyard effect, summon Phalanx. Use the Phalanx to summon Get Out Our Blazer. Now we're going to use the Lubellion. So this is our end board normally, right? We're going to go to the end phase after this, place with Auxilla and pass. But because we have the Lubellion, we can keep extending. So we're going to use the Lubellion, we're going to get specifically Magnamut. Next we get to use Gargoyle. This is where it gets really cool. Gargoyle, being a level 8 dragon, is tributable for Lubellion. So we're going to send away the Trudea, and we're going to summon out the Gargoyle. Then we're going to tribute it for Lubellion. Next, we're going to use the Lubellion, and we're going to place the Regained. This is where we get those extra cards. Now we can use the Magnamut, and we're going to target the Gargoyle. It's best to target Gargoyle specifically, because you want to get it back into rotation. You're going to summon, you're going to go Channeling 1 Regain, Channeling 2 Magnamut to play around Ghost Ogre, and that's going to put the Gargoyle back in the deck. You're going to draw a card, so here's your second card, and now you have the Gargoyle in the future. Next, you have 2 bodies on the board. You can use Magnamut and Lubellion, and we're going to turn them into SP here. The reason why this is SP, if you look at the example deck list for this spreadsheet, we can see that it has SP in here, but it doesn't have Seal, and it doesn't have Masquerena. And that's because it's choosing to play some more synchros as different options. But this doesn't have to be SP. If you want an even higher ceiling, you can go IP. IP obviously makes SP even better because it's just SP, but you also get to summon it on the opponent's turn and use this first effect. You can also go for Seals as well, which is also kind of strong, a little bit like SP, a little bit stronger. But this is already super strong. In the end phase, you're going to get to use Auxilla, place Atri for the extra draw, and then Magnamut is going to let you get Druisma. So now what you have on the opponent's turn is Regained to revive Magnamut, which is going to trigger. So you have a lot of follow-up. You have Bestial Druisworm as a disruption, summon out the Bestial. Then you have Atri, summon Atri, Field Spell and Atri in the appropriate chain links for whatever's going on. You're going to get to draw a card with Atri. Then you're going to get to synchro the Druisworm and the Atri into Baron. Druisworm's going to trigger, which is going to send away another card from your opponent. You're now going to have Baron negate, Blazar negate, SP Little Knight as a disruption, and with SP specifically, if you target your opponent's light or dark monster, you can use Regain to place their dark monster or light monster back into their deck so that it doesn't return in the end phase, and you also draw your fourth card, sorry, which is most likely going to be a hand trap at this point, right? We've drawn 4 cards. We had 3 other cards in our hand to start with. We almost certainly have some hand traps here. So this is a really strong combo. That's it. That's the only ones I'm going to show you. Trudea is basically the exact same thing. You can have a look over this spreadsheet if you want to refresh yourself on these combos and see the ones that I didn't show. But yeah, let me go back to Master Duel for now. Okay, so we're back here with the deck list. That was the spreadsheet. What I'm gonna do real quick now is go over specifically some of these, which is the cards not to play. So this is the stuff that you might see in other Centurion decks, and I don't think you should play it. So starting with this card, the Agnal Candle, this is an optional thing that you can search for with Bonfire. So the idea is that you use Bonfire, you search for Agnimal Candle, and this card, like Poplar, special summons itself when added to the hand. And basically the benefit of that is that it's a tuner, it's level 4, and that's going to allow you to make some synchro plays. It's just another thing to do with Bonfire when you already have a normal summon. If you already have Trudea plus Bonfire, for example, that Bonfire is extremely redundant, So Agnimal Candle is an idea, it's a little tech choice that you can use to make use of that. I don't think this is a good idea because I think the simplicity of Centurion is its biggest selling point. I don't think you want to dilute it with even more bricks and more complications. I think every slot in the deck list that can be a hand trap should be a hand trap. So I don't want to play Agnimal Candle. I don't really care if my end board is weak. I don't really care if I have too many normal summons. I think this card is counterproductive to the main benefit of the deck. Next is Centurion Chimera. This card is a Centurion card that's not very good. Basically, this is if your opponent activates a monster effect as Channeling Tool or higher, you can make it become your opponent places a Centurion from the field or graveyard in their spell and trap zone as a trap. So it is basically a negate. It is basically a monster effect negate, right? Changing the effect to something else. It's like Phantom of Yubel. It's a negate, but this card has to be on the board, and as you know, you don't really want to do that. You don't have many options to place. You saw from the combos, we don't have many options to place additional free Centurion monsters. Specifically, when we go for Trudea, we always need to get either Primera if we haven't gotten it yet, or we need to get Gargoyle for its level. And if we're going Emblem of Oath, we almost always want Atri because we want to draw those cards to draw those hand traps. At no point do we get the option to place an extra name. So this card would drastically require changing your combos to accommodate it, and it's not really that strong if you think about it. So we're not going to play this card. Next is Emeth. This is what a lot of people played instead of Gargoyle. A lot of people say that Gargoyle and Emmet are interchangeable, but I don't think that's true at all. I think Gargoyle is the better one. You saw that there was a lot of combos where we actually added back the Gargoyle and then summoned it. We actually used its effect. That's not how Emmet works. Emmet is specifically a level 8 monster. It can't even change to be level 4, so we can't use it to help summon Primera Primus, which is really, really important. And it also doesn't come back to our hand to help with extending. And on a smaller note, it also isn't a dragon, which means it can't be attributed for Lubellion. So Gargoyle just beats Emmet these days. I think it was always secretly better than Emeth, but in the past, before Atri and Primus existed, this was reasonable to play instead. But I still think Gargoyle was better right from the onset. But now it's definitely better. You definitely need this card for its level adjustment, and its dragon type, and its ability to summon itself. 3 things which this card just doesn't have. The one thing that this card does have going for it is that if it's in the graveyard, quick effect, you can target a Centurion you control, placing your spell and trap zone in a special summon this card. So it's a little bit of a chump blocker, it's a little bit of a target protection. You can do some neat things with this, but in the end, like I said, you need the Gargoyle. You need so many things about it, and there's no world in which you're going to play both because they're both bricks. So we don't play Emma. Next is Synchro Rumble. This is searchable with Crimson Dragon. This is what a lot of Crimson Dragon decks do. They will search for Synchro Rumble when they summon this card. And you might think that Centurion would do that as well, especially because we are summoning this a lot on turn 1. So we can use this normal spell card. What it does is it targets a Tuna or a level 7 or 8 Dragon Synchro. It's not going to be that in this deck, it's going to be the Tuna. And then special summon it to help you extend. Well, that doesn't do a whole bunch. That doesn't do much in Centurion. 1 extra buddy doesn't contribute to anything in the 1-card combo. And really doesn't contribute to anything in 2-card combos either. We don't need this. It's also just a brick. We definitely don't need it, and there's no reason to play it. Yeah, I think that's good enough. It doesn't contribute to a stronger board, and it's a brick. Deck Lockdown, so this is kind of representative of Floodgates in general. Anti-Spell is another one as well. anti-spell here as well. Some people have played Centurion with Floodgates, especially going first. This is very good. You can very easily play Centurion under deck lockdown past turn 1. So you go first, you make your board, you activate deck lockdown, and your opponent is completely locked out of the game, and you can still do everything you want to do on the follow-up and on the opponent's turn under deck lockdown. And the Floodgates are meant to solidify your mid-range end board and make it an FTK, right? Make it game winning. The reason why I don't think you should do that is because going second is already really hard with Centurion, and you're basically sacrificing it completely. If you take out Bystials and Hand Traps to play deck lockdowns and anti-spells, cards which do nothing going second, your deck is just auto-scooping going second all the time. So if you want a generically good deck to play on the rank ladder blind, don't play Floodgates, play the Hand Trap build. So don't play these. Next is Centurion Bonds. This is a card that was sometimes played in the deck, and it still sometimes is. I don't think you should play this. So you can see that the combos function completely, perfectly without this card. And what does this do? Place one Centurion monster from your hand or graveyard in your spell and trap zone. Okay. When would I ever want to search this over something like Wake Up? What do we use the Wake Up for in the combo? Wake Up is used to extend, to get that extra body onto the board, that extra token, and also for its graveyard effect to send the trap card, which allows you to get another body on the board for synchroing. That's two bodies with just this one card. That's pretty irreplaceable. This card placing something from your hand or graveyard is also not even one body, because it's probably a hard once per turn. They're all hard once per turn, so you probably used it already. This second effect in the graveyard, Centurion Synchro monster is special summoned. While it's in the graveyard, you can banish it, target the Centurion monster in your graveyard, place it in your spawn trap zone. It's exactly the same thing. It's placing a card which has probably already been used, so it cannot be used again, into the back row. All it's doing is setting it up for the opponent's turn, where you can see that the main combos we showed in the spreadsheet already set up 2 Centurions consistently to set up that synchro summon. So any additional Centurions would just be a complete redundant. Definitely not worth a whole card in our deck. So we're not playing this. Next is Emblema Salvation. This is actually the one card that I'm close to playing. This says banish one face-up Centurion from your spell and trap zone, then target a card your opponent controls and banish it. It's a quick play, it's an emblema, which means it's searchable with Primera Primus. This card can search for any emblema card. The reason why you might be tempted to play this card is because Oath is already a 3 of, being a starter, so if you hard draw it, Primera Primus has nothing beneficial to search. This allows you to do something beneficial. Allows you to still go for the Primera Primus lines, which end on double Blazer, and you still get this as a bonus. But again, you don't need it. It's another card that's not a hand trap. It's another card that is a brick. Definitely not needed, right? The combos that we showed all work perfectly fine. They're very solid. And the way to optimize those combos is to have as many draws from those random draws that we were drawing be hand traps. And the more cards that you replace to play things like this, the less that happens, right? So we just don't want this. Imperm. This is a super staple. Why is it not in our deck? Well, it's not a hand trap that can be used on the opponent's turn. If you draw this with all of the many draw effects that we've seen from all the combos, and I've talked about it a million times, if you draw this on the opponent's turn, you can't use it. So it doesn't qualify as a hand trap. We're not playing the imperms. Next, True Awakening. This is a counter trap. This is sort of the alternative to playing Phalanx, or the second Phalanx. You can play this. When a spell trap card is activated, send a face-up monster card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Very strong Omni Negate. The problem is you have to send a monster card from your spell and trap zone. We can see that in the combos, you used both bodies to make synchros. You needed both to synchro. you didn't have a spare one left over. If you instead use one for this, then you can't synchro. Whereas if you set phalanx instead, and you had the 2 bodies, you can still get both. You can use the phalanx, you can banish, and you can use both bodies to summon a synchro. If you want to make use of this and a synchro, you're going to need to have 3 bodies in your back row, which is less ideal, right? It's more clunky, it's not part of the main 1-card combos. You don't get 3, you get 2. So this card as your search instead of a second phalanx is not it. Despite it being stronger, it's just not it. It's also a lot worse going second. Phalanx you can set into a board and use more proactively. This card is very, very defensive, very, very one-sided. It's for going first only. So we don't play this, even though it's royal. And then Beast, this is because you play Bestials. Obviously you play Regain because it's the better target for Libellion. Why not Beast? Well, it's a brick. You don't need it. You don't need it. You just don't need it. It's the same reason you don't play it in Branded. It's the same reason you don't play it in other kinds of Bestial decks that play Regained. It's just not necessary. And it's a really, really bad brick. So we're not playing Beast. And then there's a few cards in the extra deck here. We have Dispather. This is another Synchro 10 option. I don't like playing this. I recently did a Centurion Rookie to Master climb. And I never summoned this like once in the whole climb. Because it just doesn't come up. If you're going to summon a 10, it's probably Baron. And that's it. You don't summon 10 super often, but when you do, it's Baron. And that's about the gist of it, so we never summon Dispather. Same for Siffer. If you're going to summon a 12, it's probably Blazar or Legacia. And that's it. You don't summon this, because it's probably not this one that you want. Same for this. This card might seem crazy. This card has the effect to banish all cards your opponent controls, which you might think is a really, really important tool to have access to. If you don't want to just negate something, you want to actually clear a whole field. But it turns out, no, I never summoned this. I never summoned this. It's always just Blazar over this. Especially because when you think about it, most of the time you want to use your Synchro on the opponent's turn as soon as possible, so that you can set up a negate for the most important card. Right? If your opponent activates Rotor or some random search card, you're going to do everything immediately on resolution to set up Blazar, because you don't want your opponent to slam down a really important card right away that you wish you could negate. You know, like Grass or Branded Fusion or something. You're always going to set it up as soon as possible, which just makes this card less likely to come up because you're not holding it for a specific situation, right? Banish your opponent's entire field only makes sense if your opponent has been playing for a while, right? And if we're talking about a complicated game where we're going second and we're playing into a board, that's probably not happening, right? Centurion doesn't do that. We either insta-win with hand traps going second, or we insta-lose because they combo. So this really just doesn't come up. So we don't play this either, which is why we settle on this deck list here, which looks like this. The things that I think are interchangeable, I mentioned this at the start of the video. I think you can play Bestials, I think you can play more Veiler, you could play more Ogre, you could play less Bonfire, but at least one in my opinion. And that's about it. The extra deck I think is perfect like this. You definitely want to keep the deck 40, never go over 40 with this deck. So that's why I like to cut the deck down a little bit, and just for the very specific format right now, while Blue Eyes is really good, Veiler isn't the best card in the world, so Bestials are a little bit more high priority. And this is my favorite list, exactly like this. And I did a recent video about that with this exact list as well. So, yeah, that's it. That's going to do it for my short introduction to Centurion, my short guide. It's not as in-depth as my branded one or anything, but I showed the spreadsheet. Again, the link is in the pinned comment if you wanna look at it. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Thanks for watching.